Okay, thank you for coming back. And right now we are in a series of about Israel. And our last video we were introducing who Israel was, why they are important biblically, and we're going to continue where we left off. Right now, I want to start by reading in Genesis chapter 12, and I'm going to read to you right now the words of the Lord to Abram. And this is before his name was changed to Abraham, before that covenant was made. So here are the words of the Lord. Go forth from your country and from your relatives and from your father's house to the land which I will show you. And I will make you a great nation, and I will bless you and make your name great. And so you shall be a blessing. And I will bless those who bless you, and the one who curses you I will curse. And in you all the families of the earth will be blessed. So we see here, there's a couple different things. God is telling Abram specifically, hey, you are living right now in a pagan land. You're living with your father. I would like you to move. Get all of your things and go where? To a place that I will show you. And later on, we're going to talk about where that place is because it's very important. God actually marks out, describes the boundaries of the land of Canaan, which is where he brings Abraham eventually. And that will eventually be the land of Israel, right? When the Israelites escape the clutches of the Egyptians and Moses leads them out to the promised land. Well, that land is Canaan. It's the same land. And God is very careful to not only say that this is the land that I'm giving to you, I'm going to show it to you, I'm going to mark it out specifically so that you understand what the boundaries are and so that everybody else understands. Because remember, this is in writing. It's in writing directly from God. So he is the author of the contract. I guess that's one thing you could also say about the land. If somebody were to say, well, this is, Palestinian land, or this is, some other land, Philistines or Amalekites or whoever, okay, that's fine. There may have been a couple of people groups, nomadic people groups that had moved through there and maybe were squatting on that land. God makes it very clear. Number one, it's his land to give. And he does emphasize that. This is my land, God says. Marks it out, gives it to Abraham, who is the progenitor of the Jews. Okay, important. So, as we continue, and I just wanted to make sure that we read that part of Genesis, right? Let's punch the fact that this land was given to Abraham's descendants, okay? Let's take a look at Genesis 15. On that day, the Lord made a covenant with Abram, saying, to your descendants I have given this land, from the river of Egypt as far as the great river, the river Euphrates. So, that's important as well. We see that at least, so this isn't the only time he talks about the boundaries, but we know at least generally the land that he's giving the descendants of Abraham is going to be from Egypt, from the river, right? What's the river of Egypt? The Nile, okay? From the Nile all the way to the Euphrates. Now, interestingly, the land that is occupied by Israel right now does lie in between those boundaries, but it doesn't reach both of those boundaries. Does that make sense? In other words, the land that God gave to Israel is not being occupied by Israel exclusively right now. And that is something that, according to prophecy, will change. Okay? So I'm not sure if that's a huge explosion in your mind right now, but that will happen. And so right now they are not living entirely in the land as they were supposed to. God repeated this promise of, oh, I'm sorry, let's go to Genesis 17:8. Let's go to Genesis 17, verse 8. He is talking specifically again to Abram, and he is, I think at this point, 99 years old, right? Which is, middle-aged for our for the forefathers. But anyway, chapter 17, verse 8 of Genesis. I will make you exceedingly fruitful, and I will make nations of you, and kings will come forth from you. I will establish my covenant between me and you and your descendants after you throughout their generations for an everlasting covenant, to be God to you and to your descendants after you. I will give to you and to your descendants after you the land of your sojournings, all the land of Canaan, for an everlasting possession, and I will be their God. Okay, so what does everlasting mean? Well, in the Hebrew, and we can take a look at the actual text, the actual word, but the word means everlasting, means forever. So there's no issue with understanding what that means. Everlasting possession means that they will possess that land forever. Okay? Now, somebody may say, oh, but wait a minute, what about, prior to the 1940s, right? Before the agreement, the Balfour Declaration, right? But with the with England and so forth. Well, as it turns out, there was a remnant of people that were living there. There weren't very many, probably in the few, maybe even less than 1,000, but there were Jews living in the land at that time. They didn't have a formal government, right? So you couldn't call them a nation. However, even if there weren't any Jews on that land, it could still be their possession. Do you see what I mean? God has given it to them. God has ceded them that land, not for a little bit, but forever, for an everlasting possession. It would be as if you left your house, right? And you went for a long vacation, several months. And, when you came back, the house would still belong to you, right? Why? Well, because you have the title, you have the deed, and the bank ceded it to you because it's yours. You paid for it, right? Same with Israel and God and the Israelites. That's what the scripture says, okay? It's an everlasting possession. Let's take a look at something else. God repeated this promise again to Isaac in Genesis 26, verses 3 through 4. So let's take a look at Genesis 26, verses 3 through 4. Let's start in verse 2. The Lord appeared to him and said, do not go down to Egypt. Stay in the land of which I shall tell you. Sojourn in this land, and I will be with you and bless you. For to you and to your descendants I will give all these lands, and I will establish the oath which I swore to your father Abraham. Verse 4, I will multiply your descendants as the stars of heaven, and will give your descendants all these lands, and by your descendants all the nations of the earth shall be blessed, because Abraham obeyed me and kept my charge, my commandments, my statutes, and my laws. Okay, important again, not only reiterating the promise, but expanding on it, right? So we see that not only is he giving, first of all, I swore to your father, right? Everlasting treaty, everlasting deed. I'm also going to multiply your descendants like the stars of the heaven. I'm going to give your descendants and your descendants' descendants, right, all of these lands, and it's through them, or how does it say, by your descendants all the nations of the earth shall be blessed. And why? Because Abraham obeyed. And we find out in the book of Hebrews What that means is Abraham had faith. Abraham had faith in God. And we'll talk more about faith and atonement in the Old Testament later on. And I think that will be of particular interest to my Jewish viewers. So let's stop there and chew on these verses. Again, read through these verses and read through all of Genesis. When you do that, you're going to see that it's not just some book way back when, right? It is that. Not only is it that, but it's historical evidence. It's written epistemological, right? Evidence. It's written and it's recorded, and it also shows by God's own mouth that Israel belongs to the Jews forever. Okay. And we'll pick up where we left off next time.